America is assessing the damage from the hurricane. And this has now popped up a very interesting excerpt from the law that says that there is a natural disaster exemption for voter ID. And of course, we know how the Democrats and Rahm Emanuel and Obama and Biden and Harris, how they never let a crisis go to waste. And so how are they not going to let this hurricane go to waste? So we'll go through this. This came over from this guy, Jerry Cohen, and we'll read through what the law says because we are just a short time out from this election. A whole region of the country has been devastated, and it feels like the Democrats are just kind of okay with it. Joe Biden says that there's not going to be any more resources going for this area, and Kamala is talking a lot, but she's still out in Nevada and elsewhere campaigning. Now, Trump is going to be going out there to support the effort. But here's some more about the damage, and we're praying for our friends over there. But they say supplies are now being rushed. People are figuring out what the damage was. 107 now dead. The death toll has risen. And it's just bad. It's bad. A crisis is unfolding. North Carolina, very important state for the election. And I know that sounds a little bit too soon. Yeah, but it's a reality, as we're going to talk about in this article. 107 people in 6 states were killed. North Carolina County reported 30 people killed. Georgia's death count raised Monday from 17 to 25. And we remember back during COVID, there was an emergency that required changing a bunch of rules. And North Carolina's governor, now Roy Cooper, predicted the toll would rise. Rescuers, other emergencies are trying to figure out where everybody is and how to piece things back together. Pinder said on a Sunday call, "We hear you. We need food and water. My staff has been making every request possible to the state for support. We've been working with every single organization that has reached out. What I promise you is that we are very close." So water systems are damaged. I found some other images just to show you, right? I'm in Arizona. We are a world away from any of this. We get 5 raindrops. Everybody freezes in place. Traffic, people are careening off the road. Oh my gosh, there's water. So we see something like this is devastating, obviously, even if you're familiar with rain and water and hurricanes. But you can just see what the damage looks like. An entire town is basically just wiped off the map. We're seeing footage. I've seen footage of a Wendy's that was basically underwater. And so I'm sure you've seen a lot of it. We're praying for everybody impacted by that. And hopefully they can get things back on track quickly. But you can see the damage is extensive. Here was another scene from Joe Biden. He is asked now, is there anything else we can do about this there, Joe? You going to make this a Katrina situation where everything is melting down because George Bush is in charge? They always do this, where the party in power, if they want to remain in power, then the Democrats will not make a big deal out of anything, right? If there's any riots, if there's a hurricane, if there's a war, if there's a border invasion, nothing's a problem. Assassination attempts. Oh, it's just relax. It's nothing. Stop it. It's nothing at all. We have total control of the country. Democrats are in charge. You're safe and secure. But when Trump's in charge or when the Republicans are in charge, then any little thing that happens is the end of the world. Total incompetence. We're all going to die because some Republicans in charge. Happened with Katrina. Bush was in charge. Katrina equals George Bush doesn't like black people. Okay. And then they just rub his nose into it every day. But when they burn down the 3rd precinct in Minneapolis, it's not a problem. It's summer of love. It's mostly peaceful, a little fiery, but mostly peaceful, right? We know the story. But if you reverse that, if they're in charge, then when these things happen, they want to make sure that they can tamper it down. There are no problems. And in this area, North Carolina and these other states like Georgia, Kamala Harris is underwater there. And that's not my statement. That's another Democrat that has said that. And that is not really an ideal phrase when we have a hurricane coming through. But it's true. And it seems like maybe this is a nice opportunity for them to exploit a crisis that they never let go to waste. Here's Joe.
Yes, it's tragic. Matter of fact, we're trying to get the exact number. My FEMA advisor is on the ground in Florida right now. There's a distinction between the numbers that FEMA's used and the ones that are used by the locals. It really is amazing. You saw the photographs.
It's terrible.
It's stunning.
It's unbelievable. But
it really is.
Such a wide area.
And we give them all everything that we have. We're on the ground ahead of time. So we're working hard.
Are there any more resources the federal government could be giving them?
No, we've given them, we have pre-planned a significant amount of it, even though they didn't ask for it yet. Hadn't asked for it yet.
Okay, are you going to give them anything else? No, we already gave them everything that they need, even stuff they didn't ask for. So we're not giving him any more. All right, so that's our president, and he's just barely there, as you can tell. And is this the beach look? Did he just get off the beach? I think so. He was enjoying the beach. Well, he went to the beach while Mother Nature brought the beach to everyone else. And so Joe's, what's the problem? I love the beach. I was there all weekend. What's the problem? So what? You have a little water out there. Relax. Okay. So it's not very leaderly like of the president, but that's about as much as they can muster from him. Now, Trump is going out there, and you can see that he's going to be going to Georgia. They posted this. They said Trump, 45th president, will visit Valdosta, Georgia, to receive a briefing on the devastation of Hurricane Helene, facilitate the distribution of relief supplies, deliver remarks to the press on Monday, September 30th at 2 p.m. So the president will be speaking about this. But people are paying attention to this very interesting provision of the law from Jerry Cohen. He says there is a natural disaster exemption. To its new voter ID law for voters who are, quote, the victim of a natural disaster. So under federal disaster declaration, which is what we're going to look at, this exemption was designed for voters who may have lost their ID but require a provisional ballot. And so it's interesting, right? If it's a provisional ballot, it means that it doesn't really count, probably, until they verify it. But you can now vote without ID in North Carolina. And presumably, for the people that don't have IDs, that's a good thing. People who are actually citizens who are following the law, for the law that this is meant to impact. But we know how the Democrats work, right? There's COVID, and suddenly they're bringing in wheelbarrows full of votes. They're like, oh no, all these people were going to die if we couldn't have them come to the ballot box. So I had to go collect them for them, right? You understand how this works. So it feels like a little bit of a deja vu. Never let a crisis go to waste. Here's the rule. Now, requirement for photo ID, this is from North Carolina, very important swing state, one of the 7, says photo ID required to vote. Okay, when a registered voter presents a vote in person, the registered voter shall produce voter ID that contain a photograph of the registered voter, right? That's the standard law. Can be a driver's license, special ID card, passport, photo ID card, student ID card, employee ID card, driver's license from, okay, got it. Now, you verify it. After you verify the ID, which is great. We like ID. I like ID checks because we want our citizens to be the only ones voting. Now, a voter shall be permitted to vote unless it doesn't bear a reasonable resemblance. Okay, how it works. What happens if you don't have photo ID? Now, you get a provisional ballot now. If the registered voter cannot produce the ID as required, as they just detailed for us, because they've been taken out with a hurricane or you're a Democrat ballot collector or whatever, the registered voter may cast a provisional ballot that is counted only if they bring acceptable forms of photograph ID listed later. Now, so that sounds good. Of this subsection, no later than the end of business on the business day prior to the canvass of the County Board of Elections is provided under law. So, all right, so they do have to basically rectify this. So they'll allow them to vote without an ID if they don't have an ID. Okay, we're not to the exception yet. So let's just say they show up to the ballot box, no hurricane. Hey, we need your ID for you to cast a vote. They pull it out. I don't have it. I don't have my ID. You don't have anything? No, I don't have anything. I forgot my whole wallet. Oh, I want to vote. Okay, we have to give you provisional because we can't. So go get your ID and then bring it back. Can you go home and get it and just bring it back now so we can give you a regular ballot? No, I can't. I'm out of time. I'm on my way to pick up the kids. All right, here, I'll cast a provisional. All right, then, as long as they bring it back and confirm it, the state board shall provide them a provisional ballot due to the failure to provide photo ID on the deadline to return in order for the vote to be counted. Okay, so by the time they ultimately canvass the final counting of the vote, as long as you bring ID back, you're good. Now, there are exceptions to that. Let's see. The following exceptions are provided for a registered voter who does not produce an acceptable form of ID as required. So there could be a religious objection. If the registered voter does not produce an acceptable form of photograph ID, then they can cast a provisional ballot. All right, so religious objection. Now, what if there's a reasonable impediment? If a registered voter does not produce a form of photo ID because the registered voter suffers from a reasonable impediment, whatever that is, I don't know, having your house blown into oblivion, that prevents the registered voter from presenting photo ID, they may complete an affidavit under penalty of perjury at the voting place and affirm, right? So you don't need ID, you just fill out a form, that they are the same individual who personally appears, that they will cast a provisional ballot while voting in person, and that they suffer from a reasonable impediment that stops them from presenting photo ID. Now, the registered voter shall also complete a reasonable impediment declaration form. And upon completion of the affidavit, the registered voter may cast a provisional ballot. And then does that ballot need to be cured with photo ID later? That's the question, right? And I'm sure there'll be lawsuits from the Democrats that say, no, they don't. Just count that. Now, let's see. Natural disaster. Let's see. If a registered voter does not produce an acceptable form of photo ID due to being a victim of a natural disaster occurring within 100 days before an election, ding, 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 that resulted in a disaster declaration by the president or the governor of this state, which I'm sure will happen or has happened, the registered voter may complete an affidavit under penalty of perjury at the voting place and affirm, so at the voting place, right? So you're not getting a mail-in is what it looks like. Affirm that the registered voter is the same individual who personally appears at the voting place, will cast the provisional ballot while voting in person, and 3, was a victim of a natural disaster occurring within 100 days of an election. Upon completion of the affidavit, then they may cast a provisional ballot. Now, these are let's continue on. Let's see how this works. But the reasonable impediment form, so inability, they say they shall adopt a declaration form. So really, I think could be either one of these. Like there's a natural disaster and we cannot get ID to you. The state board shall adopt a reasonable that includes the following: lack of transportation, disability, lack of birth certificate, work, family responsibilities, I guess are all reasonable impediments. It's pretty broad. Lost or stolen. Photo ID has not been received yet, or other reasonable impediment, which could be virtually anything. So if the county board determines that they voted a provisional ballot only due to the inability to provide proof of ID and the required affidavit, they shall find that the provisional ballot is valid. There it is, right? Unless the county board has grounds to believe the affidavit is false. So that is what gives them the ability to then just have people vote without ID. As long as they fill out the form, then it's going to be considered valid based on a national emergency. And I have no question in my mind that there are many people who legitimately need to use this provision because their house got exploded by the weather. It's terrible. And there are going to be many others who didn't have that happen to them. So the purpose of this is to confirm the person presenting to vote is a registered voter. And there you go. So that's another thing that I'm sure is going to be exploited. So we're going to keep our eye on that.